undiagnosed in the community because they have been obese and actually have diabetes. So if you look at this data from Donald Ma from Hong Kong, and they look at the type 2 diabetes in our part of the world, the East Asians, and what is the difference between our populations and the West? Are we a much bigger problem than the West? We've been kind of laughing at the West and saying that, oh, those Americans are really fat, you know. And when I operate in Caucasians in UK, whenever I open up the abdomen, it's always fat, right? So I thought that when I come back to Malaysia, that I wouldn't have this problem, it would be that easy to operate. Well, I was laughing at the Japanese surgeon. It's very easy to operate on Japanese patients because they are all very thin and not much fat inside the tummy. But when I came back to Malaysia, I found that actually Malaysian population is also very fat. So when you open up the abdomen, it's full of fat. So, but what is the difference between the East and the West? Unfortunately, this is the truth. It seems that if you look at the body mass index, and that's going to take you through this, you can clearly see that this actually affects women much more than the men. And you can clearly see that the Europeans are those in red. Let's look at Chinese, okay? Chinese are supposed to be quite healthy, but if you look at this, which means that if you have a body mass index of, let's say, 25, pretty standard, and your risk of diabetes is actually much higher compared to the Western populations, which means that if you put on more weight inside your tummy, like myself, although I put on just 1 more inch, but my risk of diabetes is much higher than my Caucasian friend, who had put on 3 inches. So it seems that when we get fatter, our risk of diabetes is actually much more worse than the Western population. So that's why in Malaysia, if you look at those data on body mass index, you can see that half our population actually being fat, which means that our risk of diabetes is much higher than in the West, like United Kingdom or United States of America. So our physiotherapists would have a lot of work to do. They'll keep our physiotherapy graduates in the job market. And if you look at this, what have changed over years? Television watching, we don't do much nowadays. Let's look at this paper, interesting paper that look at how we behave over the years. Look at watching television, sitting down at work, those in the offices, and then standing at work, standing at home, and brisk walking. So this is very interesting for the physiotherapists indeed. You can show it to your patients that if you look at this as a change in the risk, so the higher is the risk of getting being fat. So if you do a lot of brisk walking, your risk of obesity actually is much lower. And if you watch a lot of television, your risk of obesity is actually quite high. I'm very intrigued. Can I add in some more? So in Pokemon Go, what will happen, right? I suspect this, regardless of what they say about Pokemon Go, I suspect, actually, if you put it here, your risk of obesity will come down. Because that gets people out of the door, you know, go out, look for Pokemon, go around, do a lot of brisk walking. So in fact, they are doing brisk walking, except that make sure they don't get into car accident, right? So a lot of brisk walking will do you very good. And in fact, it translates into the risk of diabetes as well. So maybe those who play Pokemon have a lower risk of diabetes. We should do into that. Maybe physiotherapy department can carry out this research. Yes? Not been published yet. So, and if you look at the amount of physical activities, how much you actually been active, basically, that the more active you are, those in black, the less risk of being fat or become diabetic. So it does correlate with the number of physical activities hours. So not only that you can look at Pokemon Go, but you can look at how much time you spend on Pokemon Go. And then you put on pedometers to measure the steps at the neck. Then we can actually carry out this study in UTAR, right? So maybe we can talk about this later. So if you look at the diabetes epidemic across the world, and it's a big problem now, and getting kind of, you look at the increase of 62% of the risk of diabetes, and across the world is all going up. But I just want to show it to you. This is Malaysia. The darker it is, the higher the risk, the higher the prevalence of diabetes. So Saudi is very high, almost equivalent to Malaysia. But of course, look at United States of America and where I come from, United Kingdom. Actually, they're not bad. It's us that have been very, very sick. And this is 2007, and we look at the projection in 2025, it's getting worse. So we become number one in the world for no good reasons. And number one because we are very, very sick. And that is a problem because we become very, very poor because the medical cost to treat diabetes is extremely high. So is there any way that we can do to reverse this? And if you look at what can we do to help your patients or your friends or yourself to lose weight, first you look at diet, you look at exercise, you look at behavioral therapy, and you look at drug therapy. So these are the standard conventional therapy. And of course, we talk about exercise going out. I think that makes sense, looking at the previous data, that if you do a lot of brisk walking, your risk of obesity and diabetes is actually much lower. So behavioral change is very important. But behavioral change itself, just to ask patients to go out to exercise is not enough. You have to actually train them, maybe a bit of cognitive therapy, to ask them to change their behavior. Because if you sit down in front of the television for a long time, it's very difficult to change their behavior. So there must be a carrot. So this morning I'm going to talk about Pokemon Go again. I think it's a good carrot, so people will then go out. So maybe there is some science behind that. And the diet. Diet itself, of course, is very important. You reduce your portions. I was very fat earlier on a few years ago, and I could not recognize myself, right? Because when I came back to Malaysia, and I drink all this coffee, teh tarik, and my boys told me, Prof, do you know that those drinks are very sweet? I said, what else can I get? You only have this, right? There's no other options, no zero sugar. So then I said, I think you better don't drink all those drinks. It's not very good. I said, I need caffeine, right? So a lot of excuses, so I don't really care. So I drank a lot of sugary things, although I don't like it. Then I found myself putting on weight. I noticed it when I was looking at some of the photos that were taken, and I was running this silent mentor program, you know. So usually during the program, they took videos, right? So then one day I look at the video and say, wow, I'm so fat, you know. Then I start thinking again, and then I started to change my diet. First of all, no sugar, completely out. Then I become a vegetarian, right? That's good, right? But being a vegetarian in Malaysia is not easy as well. The first thing, what my wife did was, she refused to cook for me, right? So I had to go out and buy my vegetarian meal. It's very difficult to look for vegetarian meals, so the best thing to look for are carbohydrates. So you replace carbohydrates. So you're not having meat, you're having vegetables and carbohydrates. Then I found that I put on weight again, right? So it took me a while to actually realize that and say, I must say no to sugar and no to carbohydrates, right? Because I was working in University in Malaya, there is no vegetarian meal. So for lunch, they'll go to the canteen, they'll tapao and say, okay, get me a meal without meat, without anything, take out everything. So take out everything means just plain noodles, right? Plain noodles are carbohydrates. So you take that, you become fat, right? So after that, I look at the video, oh, become fatter again. Then change my behavior and say, no more carbohydrate. Even if I have to feel hungry, I refuse to take it. Then I slowly get control again. So it's not easy. It's not easy. I was thinking that if there is a drug, so much better, right? So if I can take a drug and I can lose weight, I can eat anything I want, that would be great. But unfortunately, the drug is a multi-billion business there, isn't it? Let's look at the obesity epidemics. The drug company will be trying mad to find a cure for that. But unfortunately, as we all know, it is not even anyway, right? I still remember before I left UK, there was this drug that you can spray into the nose, developed by Cambridge. It seems to be going to be a major breakthrough. But unfortunately, it was withdrawn from market because of complications and not really that effective. So the dream has gone.